tablet. His eyes, grey and watchful, flicked between Elena and the flight attendant like a referee, waiting to call a foul. 2 rows ahead. A woman in pearl earrings whispered something behind her hand. Elena didn't need to hear it to know. She should have expected this. She had chosen this seat, this splurge, as a retirement gift to herself. 35 years teaching English literature, mentoring young women, building a life of quiet excellence. She had earned this. But in spaces like these, black excellence was still questioned before it was celebrated. Melissa's lips were tight now, her hand hovering near her tablet. "I'll also need to see your ID." Elena didn't flinch. Instead, she reached again into her purse and retrieved the small leather wallet she always carried when she traveled. She handed over her license, her printed boarding pass, another hard-learned trick. Always carry the backup. Always be ready to prove what others assumed you forged. Melissa studied the documents a little too long, her thumb hovering over each line like she was looking for a flaw. When she finally handed them back, it was with the resigned politeness of someone who had lost an argument they were sure they'd win. "Very well, Ms. Johnson. Can I get you something to drink?" "I already have something," Elena replied, lifting her flute just slightly. Melissa nodded and turned away. Elena exhaled again, her chest still tight. The man across the aisle was still watching. He didn't smile. Just blinked, slowly, before returning to his screen. The silence in the cabin didn't dissolve, it just shifted. She'd been in this air before, the oxygen tinged with judgment. This was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it was a rerun of every moment she had walked into a room and had to prove she belonged. And she didn't know it yet, but in exactly 47 minutes, every person in that cabin would look at her very differently. The silence was pierced again, not by words, but by the sudden clink of silver against glass as the man across the aisle adjusted his tray. Elena didn't turn her head, though she felt the flicker of curiosity burning from his direction. Let them look. Let them wonder. Let them sit with their assumptions. She had nothing to explain. Her suit, charcoal grey, impeccably tailored, had cost more than she cared to admit. But she had worn it today for a reason. The small pearl studs in her ears, once her mother's, caught the light each time she tilted her head. Her shoes, leather, low-heeled, practical but stylish. Every detail had been deliberate. Not to impress. To arm herself. The world judged black women before they spoke. She had learned to enter each space already armored. The plane was still at the gate, and the bustle of last-minute boarding drifted faintly from behind the drawn curtains separating first class from the rest. Elena took a measured sip of her champagne. The bubbles were soft, crisp. It was meant to taste like luxury. Instead, it tasted like effort. The seat beside her shifted as someone new sat down. She glanced sideways, subtly. White male, late 70s, ruddy cheeks, a head full of well-managed silver hair. He smelled faintly of mint and something woody. Expensive cologne, maybe. His suit was a touch looser than fashion dictated, but nothing about him read sloppy. He caught her glance and offered a small smile. First time in first class. Elena smiled back, but not broadly. "No," she said. "It's not." The man chuckled, as if he hadn't expected that answer. "Forgive me. Just trying to make conversation." "Richard Carrington," he said, extending a hand. She took it briefly. Firm grip. No ring. "Elena Johnson." "Pleasure," he said. "Business or pleasure?" "Pleasure. I retired last week," she said, folding her napkin over her lap with care. "This is my gift to myself." "What field?" "Academia. English literature." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe admiration. He nodded slowly, adjusting the armrest between them. "Spelman College," she added, anticipating the question. He turned slightly, intrigued. "Ah." Excellent institution. My firm's recruited from there. Brilliant women. That surprised her. Most people needed the context explained. She inclined her head slightly. What firm? Carrington and Hayes. Corporate law. San Francisco based, but we have offices in Atlanta too. Elena nodded again. The name was familiar. Whispers in local circles. Articles in the business pages. You're one of the Carringtons on the letterhead. Then, he smiled, modestly. Guilty as charged. Though these days, my daughter handles more of the day-to-day. I'm semi-retired. They sat in a brief, comfortable silence. The tension in her shoulders eased a fraction. I always respected professors, he said after a moment. Especially those who shape young minds. That's a real legacy. Elena gave him a sidelong glance. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it was polished courtesy. But it didn't feel like pity. That, she had learned to detect with unerring accuracy. 35 years, she said. It adds up. Their conversation drifted, gently. Books they'd both read, neighborhoods they'd lived in. He asked thoughtful questions, didn't talk over her, didn't redirect the spotlight. A rare breed, perhaps. And then, the intercom crackled overhead. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Delta Flight 1426 to San Francisco. Elena paused mid-sip, heart catching in her throat. The voice, steady, clear, warm with just a hint of formality, rang across the cabin with effortless authority. It sounded familiar. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The audio distortion could play tricks, she knew, but something in the cadence struck her. She leaned back in her seat, unsettled, but said nothing. That voice, she'd heard it before. Not just in dreams. Not just in memory. She knew it. She just didn't know yet how. The safety demonstration began, the usual pantomime of oxygen masks and seatbelt buckles. But Elena barely noticed. Her thoughts kept circling the voice. It wasn't just the familiarity, it was the command. The kind of tone you learned over years, not months. A voice that didn't ask for attention but assumed it. Her chest tightened with something between suspicion and impossible hope. Then, another distraction, movement several rows ahead. A woman with frosted blonde hair and a designer blazer was speaking to a younger male flight attendant. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried with the clipped precision of someone used to getting her way. I specifically requested a seat that wasn't near the lavatory, she said, enunciating each word as though it were a burden. The noise. The smell. I have a meeting immediately after we land. The flight attendant, calm and professional, responded with quiet firmness. I understand your concern, Miss Whitfield, but I'm afraid we're fully booked in first class today. There are no other seats available. Miss Whitfield's eyes swept the cabin with intent. And then they landed on Elena. What about her? She asked, pointing. Not directly, but with that same entitled angle of the chin. She might not mind switching. Elena turned slowly. Their eyes met. In that moment, everything that had simmered beneath the surface since boarding ignited into one white-hot flame of awareness. The assumption was laid bare, that Elena's seat was negotiable, her comfort optional, her presence conditional. That, of everyone here, she would be the most flexible, the most accommodating, the most expendable. Before Elena could respond, Richard's voice cut in. I don't think anyone should be asked to move from their assigned seat, he said, his tone even but edged with finality. Especially not because someone else failed to plan ahead. Miss Whitfield's jaw tensed. I wasn't speaking to you. No, Richard said. You were speaking about someone. As though she weren't sitting 3 feet away. Elena felt a wave of gratitude and resentment. Gratitude that someone had spoken up. Resentment that it was necessary. That a man's voice still carried more immediate weight than her own. Thank you, Richard, she said, quietly but firmly. But I can speak for myself. She turned back to Miss Whitfield, her spine straightening, voice cool and precise. I'm quite comfortable in my assigned seat. I have no desire to be closer to the lavatory. Perhaps the gentleman engrossed in his tablet up front would be less bothered. Miss Whitfield blinked, caught off guard by the directness. The flight attendant seized the moment, gently ushering her toward another row, murmuring about checking with the gate crew once they were airborne. Elena's pulse was high, but her expression stayed serene. She felt Richard glance at her, but she didn't look his way. Not yet. When the curtain fell back into place and the last murmurs settled, he spoke again. I apologize, he said, quieter now. Old habit from decades of negotiations. I didn't mean to step on your moment. I know, Elena replied. And I appreciate it. But I've spent too many years fighting to be heard to let someone else do it for me. He nodded, chastened. My wife says the same thing. Often. That earned him the faintest smile. The plane began to push back from the gate. The cabin dimmed. The engines stirred to life, a slow roar building beneath them. Elena took another breath and finally let herself settle back in her seat. The plane rumbled forward. Through the small oval window beside her, Atlanta's skyline began to shrink. In her purse, beneath the boarding pass, beneath the printed itinerary, was a small leather-bound journal. She pulled it free and opened it to a blank page. The fountain pen followed, smooth and sure between her fingers. April 12, 2025. En route to San Francisco. Her pen paused, then moved. The retirement celebration was beautiful. My students, my colleagues, the president, even Maya, who cried when I handed over the department keys. I felt seen, respected. She smiled, thinking of their faces. I haven't told anyone why I chose this trip. Not even Janelle, who asked 3 times on the way to the airport. Just a vacation, I said. Not quite a lie. But not the full truth either. She hesitated, then wrote, It's been nearly 7 months since I last saw her in person. 7 months of video calls, of pretending her voice was enough. I miss her, and I need to see for myself that she's okay. That she's still her. She stopped again, and underlined a single word. Zora. Elena was still journaling when the flight attendant returned, Melissa, the same one who had questioned her boarding pass. But this time, her posture was different. No clipped tone, no narrowed eyes. She held a sleek tablet in one hand, her other lightly gripping the seat back in front of Elena. Professor Johnson, she asked, and the title landed like an offering. I've just been informed we have a special passenger on board. The captain would like to personally invite you to visit the cockpit. Once we reach cruising altitude. Elena blinked, the words sinking in slowly. The captain wants to see me, she asked, trying to keep her tone even. Melissa nodded, her face now tinged with something approaching curiosity. Apparently, you're acquainted. Elena's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. The familiarity of the voice. The sudden shift in treatment. The dawning awareness of what had been right in front of her. Yes, she said, setting her pen down carefully. You could say that. Richard looked over, one brow arched. Friend of the captain. Elena's smile deepened, a warmth rising in her chest. You could say that too. Most people just call her my daughter. The revelation hung in the air between them. Richard's eyes widened slightly, his face shifting from curiosity to realization, then to something almost like reverence. Your daughter is the captain of this aircraft. Elena nodded once, a glint of pride she didn't bother hiding. Captain Zora Johnson. She's been flying with Delta for 11 years. Melissa, still standing, looked visibly stunned, as though she were recalibrating everything she had assumed in the last hour. I'll let the captain know you're ready when we reach altitude, she said quickly, before excusing herself. From across the aisle, the man who had earlier eyed her with suspicion had clearly overheard. He sat up straighter now, adjusting his cufflinks. His expression had shifted too, this time tinged with discomfort, maybe even regret. Let him sit with it, Elena thought. Let all of them sit with it. She's quite an accomplishment, Richard said, a quiet awe in his voice. Commercial airline captains, especially female, and especially black female captains, are still so rare. Elena tilted her head. Less than 1%, she said. Zora knew that when she was 12 and came home from a school field trip wide-eyed and breathless. She'd seen a woman pilot. She said, "Mom, that's what I'm going to do." And she never looked back. I imagine it wasn't an easy path. Elena folded